Namaste, good evening, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, students and scholars, teachers and trainers, professors and professionals, listeners and learners, those who are listening, watching from the field of arts, commerce and engineering, especially our instructors and directors, informers of the different fields of agriculture, industry, health, hospital, post office and railways. The most honorable President Prime Minister Modi ji, respected ministers and doctors, honorable advocates, advisors, administrators and advisors, reverend fathers and mothers, affectionate sons and daughters, all of you are available, all of you are present. I welcome from USA, Dr. Rakesh. Dear friends, your presence is praiseworthy, admirable and appreciable. Our scholars and learners, those who are studying in India and abroad, in the different universities, Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford, Atlanta, Pennsylvania. Dear friends, very common topic that we have continued for studying to know the truth of science to spirituality, language to literature. 3 ways to cure intelligence excusitis. 3 easy ways to cure intelligence excusitis are: 1 is never underestimate your own intelligence and never overestimate the intelligence of others. Don't sell yourself short. Concentrate on your assets. Discover your superior talents. Remember, it's not how many brains you have got that matters. Rather, it's how you use your brains that counts. Manage your brains instead of worrying about how much IQ you have got. Remind yourself several times daily, my attitudes are more important than any intelligence. At work and at home practice positive attitudes. See the reasons why you can do it, not the reasons why you can't. Develop an I am winning attitude. Put your intelligence to creative, positive use. Use it to find ways to win, not to prove you will lose. Remember that the ability to think is of much greater value than the ability to memorize facts. Use your mind to create and develop ideas, to find new and better ways to do things. Ask yourself, am I using my mental ability to make history, or am I using it merely to record history made by others? It's no use. I am too old is excusitis. The failure, disease of never being the right age, comes in 2 easily identifiable forms: the I am too old variety and I am too young brand. You have heard hundreds of people of all ages explain their mediocre performance in life something like this: I am too old, I can't do what I want to do, or I am capable of doing because of my age handicap. Really, it's surprising how few people feel they are just right age-wise. And it's unfortunate this excuse has closed the door of real opportunity to thousands of individuals. They think their age is wrong, so they don't even bother to try. The I am too old variety is the most common form of age excusitis. This disease is spread in subtle ways. TV fiction is produced about the big executive who lost his job because of a merger and can't find another because he is too old. Mr. Executive looks for months to find another job, but he can't. And in the end, after contemplating suicide for a while, he decides to rationalize that it's nice to be on the shelf. Plays and magazines articles on the topic why you are washed up at 40 are popular. Not because they represent true facts, but because they appeal to many worried minds looking for an excuse. Dear friends, keep continual presence for listening the words that will motivate you, encourage you, inspire you to be better, nicer and finer for the betterment and upliftment of our nation and society, personally, professionally, publicly, socially, economically and politically. How to handle age excusitis? Age executis can be cured. A few years ago, while I was conducting a sales training program, I discovered a good serum which both cures this disease and vaccinates you so you won't get it in the first place. In that training program, there was a trainee named Cecil, who was 40, wanted to shift over to set himself up as a manufacturer's representative, but he thought he was too old. After all, he explained, I would have to start from scratch. And I am too old for that now. I am 40. I talked with Cecil several times about his old age problem. I used the old medicine. You are only as old as you feel. But I found I was getting nowhere. Too often people retort with, but I do feel old. Finally, I discovered a method that worked. One day after a training session, I tried it on Cecil. I said, Cecil, when does a man's productive life begin? He thought a couple of seconds and answered, oh, when he is about 20, I guess. Okay, I said, no, when does a man's productive life end? Cecil answered, well, if he stays in good state and likes his work, I guess a man is still pretty useful when he is 70 or so. Alright, I said. A lot of folks are highly productive after they reach 70. But let's agree with what you have just said. A man productive years stretch from 20 to 70. That's 50 years in between on half a century. Or half a century, Cecil, I said, you are 40. How many years of productive life have you spent? 20, he answered. And how many have you left? 30, he replied. In other words, Cecil, you haven't even reached the halfway point. You have used up only 40% of your productive years. I looked at Cecil and realized he would got the point. He was cured of his executis. Cecil saw he still had many opportunity-filled years left. He switched from thinking, I am already old, to I am still young. Cecil now realized that how old we are is not important. It's one's attitude toward age that makes it a blessing or a barricade. Curing yourself of age excusitis often opens doors to opportunity that you thought were looped tight. A relative of mine spent years doing many different things: selling, operating his own business, working in a bank, but he never quite found what he really wanted to do most. Finally, he concluded that the one thing he wanted more than anything else was to be a minister. But when he thought about it, he found he was too old. After all, he was 45, had 3 young children, and little money. But fortunately, he mustered all of his strength and told himself, 45 or not, I am going to be a minister. With a touch of faith but little else, he enrolled in a 5 years ministerial training program in Wisconsin. 5 years later, he was ordained as a minister and settled down with a fine congregation in Illinois. Old? Of course not. He still has 20 years of productive life ahead of him. I talked with this man not long ago, and he said to me, you know, if I had not made that great decision when I was 45, I would have spent the rest of my life growing old and bitter. Now I feel every bit as young as I did 25 years ago. And you almost looked it too. When you lick is executis, the natural result is to gain the optimism of youth and feel of youth. When you beat down your fears of age limitations, you add your years to your life as well as success. A former university colleague of mine provides an interesting angle on how his excusitis was defeated. Bill was graduated from Howard in the 20s. After 24 years in the stock brokerage business, during which time he made a modest fortune, Bill decided he wanted to become a college professor. Bill's friends warned him that he would overtax himself in the rugged learning program ahead. But Bill was determined to reach his goal and enrolled in the University of Illinois. At the age of 51 and 55, he had earned his degree. Today, Bill is chairman of the Department of Economics at a fine liberal arts college. He's happy too. He smiles when he says, I have got almost a third of my good years left. Old age is a failure disease. Defeat it by refusing to let it hold you back. When is a person too young? The I am too young variety of age excusitis does much damage too. About a year ago, a 23-year-old fellow named Jerry came to me with a problem. Jerry was a fine young man. He had been a parade trooper in the service and then had gone to college. While going to college, Jerry supported his wife and son by selling for a large transfer and storage company. He had done a terrific job, both in college and for his company. But today Jerry was worried. Dr. Squarch, he said, I have got a problem. My company has offered me the job of sales manager. This would make me supervisor over 8 salesmen. Congratulations. That's wonderful news, I said. But you seem worried. Well, He continued, all 8 men I am to supervise are from 7 to 21 years older than I. What do you think I should do? Can I handle it? Zeri, I said, the general manager of your company obviously thinks you are old enough for. He wouldn't have offered you this job. Just remember these 3 points and everything will work out just fine. First, don't be age conscious. Back on the farm, a boy became a man when he proved he could do the work of a man. His number of birthdays had nothing to do with it. And this applies to you. When you prove you are able to handle the job of sales manager, you are automatically old enough. Second, don't take advantage of your new gold watch. Show respect for the salesman. Ask them for their suggestions. Make them feel they are working for a team captain, not a director. Do this, and the man will work with you, not against you. Third, get used to having older persons working for you. Leaders in all fields soon find they are younger than many of the people they supervise. So, get used to having older men work for you. It will help you a lot in the coming years when even bigger opportunities develop. And remember, Zeri, your age wouldn't be a handicap unless you make it one. Today, Jerry is doing fine. He loves the transportation business, and now he is planning to organize his own company in a few years. Youth is a liability only when the youth thinks it is. You often hear that certain jobs require considerable physical maturity. Jobs like selling securities and insurance, that you have either got to have gray hair or not any hair at all in order to gain an investor's confidence is plain nonsense. What really matters is how well you know your job. If you know your job and understand people, you are sufficiently mature to handle it. Age has no real relation to ability. Unless you convince yourself that years alone will give you the stuff you need to make your mark. Many young people feel that they are being held back because of their youth. Now it is true that another person in an organization who is insecure and job scared may try to block your way forward using age or some other reason. But the people who really count in the company will not. They will give you as much responsibility as they feel you can handle well. Demonstrate that you have ability and positive attitudes, and your youthfulness will be considered an advantage. In quick recap, the cure for age excusitis is: one is, look at your present age positively. Think, I am still young, not, I am already old. Practice looking forward to new horizons and gain the enthusiasm and the feel of youth. Two is, compute how much productive time you have left. Remember, a person aged 30 still has 80% of his productive life ahead of him. And the 50-year-old still has a big 40%, the best 40% of his opportunity years left. Life is actually longer than most people think. Three is, invest future time in doing what you really want to do. It's only too late when you let your mind go negative and think it's too late. Stop thinking, I should have started years ago. That's failure thinking. Instead thinking I am going to start now, my best years are ahead of me. That's the way successful people think. Or is. But my case is different. I attract bad luck. Recently, I heard a traffic engineer discuss the highway safety. He pointed out that upwards of 40,000 persons are killed each year in so-called traffic accidents. The main point of his talk was that there is no such thing as a true accident. What we call an accident is the result of human or mechanical failure, or a combination of both. What this traffic expert was saying substantiates what wise men throughout the ages have said. There is a cause for everything. Nothing happens without a cause. There is nothing accidental about the weather outside today. It is the result of specific causes, and there is no reason to believe that human affairs are an exception. Yet hardly a day passes that you do not hear someone blame his program on bad luck. And it's a rare day that you do not hear someone attribute another person's success to good luck. Let me illustrate how people come to luck executives. I launched recently with 3 young junior executives. The topic of conversation that day was George Shee, who just yesterday had been picked from among their group for a major promotion. Why did George get the position? Why did George get the position? These 3 fellows dug up all sorts of reasons. Dear friends, keep continuing your presence as you are listening the truths of science to spirituality, language to literature. That will make you able to understand the philosophies and psychologies of the foreigners, those who are almost busy in inventing, introducing, innovating newnesses for the world. Dear friends, I was talking about the seriousness of luck. Executives not long ago with a sales executive of a machine tool manufacturing company. He became excited about the problem and began to talk about his own experience with it. I have never heard it called that before, he said, but it is one of the most difficult programs every sales executive has to wrestle with. Just yesterday, a perfect example of what you are talking about happened in my company. One of the salesmen walked in about 4 o'clock with a $112,000 order for machine tools. Another salesman whose volume is so low he is problem. His problem was in the office at the time. Hearing John tells the good news, he rather enviously congratulated him and then said, well, John, you are lucky again. Now what the weak salesman won't accept is that luck had nothing to do with John's big order. John had been working on that customer for months. He had talked repeatedly to a half dozen people out there. John had stayed up nights figuring out exactly what was best for them. Then he called our engineers to make preliminary designs of the equipment. John wasn't lucky unless you can call carefully planned work and patiently executed planned luck. Suppose luck were used to reorganize General Motors. If luck determined who does what and who goes there, every business in the nation would fall apart. Assume for a moment that General Motors were to be completely organized on the basis of luck. To carry out the reorganization, names of all employees would be placed in a battle. The first name drawn would be president, the second name the executive vice president, and so on down the line. Sounds stupid, doesn't it? Well, that's how luck could work. People who rise to the top in any occupation, business management, sailing, law, engineering, acting, or what have you, get there because they have superior attitude and use their good sense is applied hard work. In applied hard work, conquer luck executives in two ways. One is accept the law. Take a second look at what appears to be someone's good luck. You will find not luck but preparation, planning, and success producing thinking. Preceded is good fortune. Take a second look at that appears to be someone's bad luck. Look and you will discover certain specific reasons Mr. Success receives a setback. He learns and profits, but when Mr. Mediocre loses, he fails to learn. Two is, don't be a wishful thinker. Don't waste your mental muscles dreaming of an effortless way to win success. Don't become successful simply through luck. Success comes from doing those things and mastering those principles that produce success. Don't count on luck for promotions, victories, the good thing in life. Luck simply isn't designed to deliver these good things. Instead, just concentrate on developing those qualities in yourself that will make you a winner. Build confidence and destroy fear. Walk fearlessly and pray to be the winner, true winner, to be the victor, conqueror. French mean well with they say. It's only your imagination. Don't worry, there is nothing to be afraid of. But you and I know this kind of fear medicine never really works. Such soothing remarks may give us fear relief for a few minutes or maybe even a few hours. But that is only in your imagination. Treatment doesn't really build confidence and cure fear. Yes, fear is real and we must recognize it exists before we can conquer it. Most fear today is psychological. Worry, tension, embarrassment, panic all stem from mismanaged, negative imagination. But simply knowing the breeding ground of fear doesn't cure fear. If a physician discovers you have an infection in some part of your body, he doesn't stop there. He proceeds with treatment to cure the infection. The old, it's only in your mind. Treatment presumes fear doesn't really exist, but it does. Fear is real. Fear is success enemy. Number one, fear stops people from capitalizing on opportunity. Fear wears down. Fear wears down physical vitality. Fear actually makes people sick, causes organic difficulties, shortens life. Fear closes your mouth when you want to speak. Fear, uncertainty, lack of confidence explains why we still have economic recessions. Fear explains why millions of people accomplish little and enjoy little. Truly, fear is a powerful force in one way or another. Fear prevents people from getting what they want from life. Fear of all kinds and sizes is a form of psychological infection. We can cure a mental infection the same way we cure a body infection with a specific proven treatment. First, though, as part of your pre-treatment, pre-patriation, condition yourself with this fact. All confidence is acquired, developed. No one is born with confidence. Those people you know who radiate confidence, who have conquered worry, who are at ease everywhere and all the time acquire their confidence, every bit of faith. You can too. This chapter shows how during World War II the Navy had shown that all of its new recruits either knew how to swim or learned how. The idea being, of course, that the ability to swim might someday save the sailor's life at sea. Non-swimming recruits were put into swimming classes. I watched a number of these training experiences. In a superficial sort of way, it was amusing to see young, healthy men terrified by a few feet of water. One of the exercises I recall required the new sailor to jump, not dive, from about 6 feet in the air into 8 or more feet of water, while a half dozen expert swimmers stood by. Watching this in a deeper sense was a sad sight. The fear those young men displayed was real. Yet all that stood between them and the defeat of all that fear was one drop into the water below. On more than one occasion, I saw young men accidentally push off the boat. The result, fear defeated. This incident, familiar to thousands of former Navy men, illustrates just one point: action cures fear, indecision, postponement. On the other hand, fertilize fears. Jot that down in your success rule book right now. Action cures fear. Action does cure fear. Several months ago, a very troubled executive in his early 40s came to see me. He had a responsible job as a buyer for a large retailing organization. Worriedly, he explained, worriedly, I am afraid of losing my job. I have got that feeling that my days are numbered. Why, I asked? Well, the pattern is against me. Sales figures in my department are off 7% from a year ago. This is pretty bad, especially wise decisions recently, and I have been singled out several times by the merchandise manager for not keeping pace with the company's progress. I have never felt quite like this before. He continued, I have lost my grip and it shows. My assistant buyer senses it. The sales people see it too. Other executives, of course, are aware that I am sleeping. I am sleeping. One buyer even suggested at a meeting of all head buyers the other day that part of my line should be put in his department. Where? He said it could make money for the store. It is like drowning and having a crowd of spectators just standing there waiting for me to sink away. The executive started on, elaborating further on his predicament. Finally, I cut in and asked, what are you doing about it? What are you trying to do to correct the situation? Well, he answered, there isn't much I can do, I guess, but hope for the best. To this comment I asked, honestly now, is hope enough? Pausing, but not giving him a chance to answer, I put another question to him, why not take action to support your hope? Go on, he said. He said, go on well. There are two kinds of action that seem to fit your case. First, start this afternoon to move those sales figures upward. We have got to face it. There is a reason. Your sales are slipping. Find it. Maybe you need a special sale to clear out your slow moving merchandise. So you will be in position to buy some fresh stock. Perhaps you can rearrange your display counters. Maybe your sales people need more enthusiasm. I can't pinpoint what will turn your sales volume upward, but something will, and it would probably be wise to talk privately with your merchandise manager. He may be on the verge of putting you out, but when you talk it over with him and ask his advice, he will certainly give you more time to work things out. It's too expensive for the store to replace you as long as stock management feels there is a chance you will find a solution. I went on, then get your assistant buyers on the bail. I went on, then get your assistant buyers on the bowl. Quite acting like a drowning man. Let people around you know that you are still alive. Courage was again in his eyes. Then he asked, you said there are two kinds of action I should take. What's the second? The second type of action, which you might say is an insurance policy, is to let 2 or 3 of your closest business friends in the trade know. You might consider an offer from another store, assuming of course it is substantially better than your present job. I don't believe your job will be insecure after you take some affirmative action to get those sales figures on the rise. But just in case, it's good to have an offer or two. Remember, it's 10 times easier for a man with a job to get another job than it is for someone unemployed to connect. 2 days ago, this once troubled executive called me. After our talk, I buckled down. I made a number of changes, but the most basic one was with my sales people. I used to hold sales meetings once a week, but now I am holding one every morning. I have got those people really enthusiastic. I guess once they saw some life in me, they were ready to push harder too. They were just waiting for me to start things moving again. Last week, my sales were well ahead of a year ago and much better than the store's average. Oh, by the way, he continued, I want to tell you some other good news. I got 2 job offers since we talked. Naturally, I am glad. But I have turned them both down since everything is looking good here again. When we face tough problems, we stay mired. We stay mired in the mud until we take action. Hope is a start, but hope needs action to win victories. Put the action principle to work. Next time you steady yourself. Then search for an answer to this question. What kind of action can I take to conquer my fear? To conquer my fear. Isolate your fear, then take appropriate action. Below are some examples of fear and cures. Type of fear. One is embarrassment because of personal appearance. Action that you are to take improve it, go to barber shop or beauty salon, shine shoes, get clothes and press. In general, practice better grooming. It doesn't always take new clothes. Second, fear of losing an important customer. Work doubly hard to give better service. Correct anything that may have caused customers to lose confidence in you. Please, fear of failing an examination. Action that you are to take, convert worry time into study time. For fear of things totally beyond your control. Action you are to take, switch your attention to something totally different. Go out into your yard and pull up weeds, play with your children, go to a movie. 5 is fear of being physically hurt by something you can't control, such as a tornado or an aeroplane out of control. Then the action that you are to take, you are to turn your attention to helping to relieve the fear of others. Pray. 6 is fear of what other people may think and say. The action you are to take, make sure that what you plan to do is right, then do it. No one ever does anything worthwhile for which he is not criticized. 7. Fear of making an investment or purchasing a home. Action that you are to take, analyze all factors, then be decisive. Make a decision and stick with it. Trust your own judgment. Dear friends, type of fear of people. Action that you are to take, put them into proper perspective. Remember, the other person is just another human being, pretty much like yourself. Use this 2-step procedure to cure fear and win confidence. One is, isolate your fear, pin it down, determine exactly what you are afraid of. 2 is, then take action. There is some kind of action for any kind of fear. And remember, hesitation only enlarges, magnifies the fear. Take action promptly. Be decisive. Much lack of self-confidence can be traced directly to a mismanaged memory. Your brain is very much like a bank. Every day you make thought deposits in your mind bank. These thoughts, deposits grow and become your memory. When you settle down to think or when you face a problem, in effect you say to your memory bank, what do I already know about this? Your memory bank automatically answers and supplies you with bits of information relating to this situation that you deposited on previous occasions. Your memory then is a basic supplier of raw material for your new thoughts. The teller in your memory bank is tremendously reliable. He never crosses you up. If you approach him and say, Mr. Teller, let me withdraw some thoughts I deposited in the past proving I am inferior to just about everybody else, he will say, certainly, sir. Recall how you failed 2 times previously when you tried this. Recall what your 6th grade teacher told you about your inability to accomplish things. Recall what you overheard some fellow workers saying about you. Recall. And on, Mr. Tanner goes, digging out of your brain, thought after thought that proves you are inadequate. But suppose you visit your memory teller with this request, Mr. Teller, I face a difficult decision. Can you supply me with any thoughts with which give me reassurance, with which give me reassurance? And again Mr. Teller says, certainly, sir, But this time he delivers thoughts you deposited earlier that say you can succeed. Recall the excellent job you did on a similar situation before. Recall how much confidence Mr. Smith placed in you. Recall what your good friend said about you. Recall Mr. Taylor, perfectly responsive, lets you withdraw the thought deposits you want to withdraw. After all, it is your bank. You are two specific things to do: build confidence through efficient management of your memory bank. One is deposit only positive thoughts in your memory bank. Let's face it squarely, everyone encounters plenty of unpleasant, embarrassing and discouraging situations. But unsuccessful and successful people deal with these situations in directly opposite ways. Unsuccessful people take them to heart, so to speak. They dwell on the unpleasant situations, thereby giving them a good start in their memory. They don't take their minds away from them. At night, the unpleasant situation is the last thing they think about. Confident, successful people, on the other hand, don't give it another thought. Successful people specialize in putting positive thoughts into their memory bank. What kind of performance would your car deliver if every morning before you left for work you scooped up a double handful of dirt and put it into your crankcase? That fine engine would soon be a mess, unable to do what you want to do. Negative, unpleasant thoughts deposited in your mind affect your mind the same way. Negative thoughts produce needless wear and tear on your mental motor. They create worry, frustration, and feelings of inferiority. They put you beside the road while others drive ahead. Do this in these moments when you are alone with your thoughts. When you are driving your car or eating alone, recall present positive experiences. Put good thoughts in your memory bank. This boosts confidence. It gives you that I sure feel good feeling. It helps keep your body functioning right too. Here is an excellent plan. Just before you go to sleep, deposit good thoughts in your memory bank. Count your blessings. Recall the many good things you have to be thankful for. Your wife or husband, your children, your friends, your health. Recall the good things you saw people do. Today. Recall your little varieties or victories or accomplishments. Go over the reasons why you are glad to be alive. 2 is withdraw only positive thoughts from your memory bank. I was closely associated several years ago in Chicago with a firm of psychological consultants. They handled many types of cases, but mostly marriage problems and psychological adjustment situations, or dealing with mind matters. One afternoon, as I was working with the head of the firm about his profession and his techniques for helping the seriously maladjusted person, he made this remark: there would be no need for my services if people would do just one thing. What's that? What's that? I asked eagerly. Simply this: destroy their negative thoughts before those thoughts become mental monsters. Most individuals I try to help, he continued, are operating their own private museum of mental horror. Many marriage difficulties, for example, involve the honeymoon monster, The honeymoon wasn't as satisfactory as one or both of the marriage partners had hoped. But instead of burying the memory, they reflected on it hundreds of times until it was a giant obstacle to successful marital relationships. They come to me as much as 5 or 10 years later. Usually, of course, my clients don't see where their trouble lies. It's my job to uncover and explain the source of their difficulty to them and help them to see what a triviality it really is. A person can make a mental monster out of almost any unpleasant happening. My psychologist friend went on a job failure, a jilted romance, a bad investment, disappointment in the behavior of a 10-age child. These are common monsters I have to help troubled people destroy. It is clear that any negative thought, if fertilized with repeated recall, can develop into a real mind monster, breaking down confidence and paving the way to serious psychological difficulties. In a recent article in Cosmopolitan magazine, The Drive Towards Self-Destruction, Alice Mulcahy pointed out that upward of 30,000 Americans commit suicide each year and another 100,000 attempt to take their own lives. She went on to say, there is shocking evidence that millions of other people are killing themselves by slower, less obvious method. Still others are committing spiritual rather than physical suicide, constantly seeking out ways to humiliate, punish and generally diminish themselves. The psychologist friend mentioned before told me. Psychologist friend mentioned before me told me how he helped one of his patients to stop committing mental and spiritual suicide. This patient, he explained, was in her late 30s and had 2 children. In lay terminology, he suffered from severe depression. She looked back on every incident of her life as being an unhappy experience. Her school days, her marriage, the bearing of her children, the present she had lived, all were thought of negatively. She volunteered that she couldn't remember ever having been truly happy. And since what one remembers from the past colors, what one sees in the present, she saw nothing but pessimism and darkness. When I asked her what she saw in a picture, which I showed her, she said, it looks like there will be a terrible thunderstorm tonight. There was the gloomiest interpretation of the picture I have yet heard. The picture was a large oil painting of the sun low in the sky and a jagged, rocky coastline. The painting was very cleverly done and could be construed to be either a sunrise or a sunset. The psychologist commented to me that what a person sees in the picture is a clue to his personality. Most people say it is a sunrise, not surprise. But the depressed, mentally disturbed person nearly always says it's a sunset. As a psychologist, I can't change what already is in a person's memory. What I can, with the patient's cooperation, help the individual to see his past in a different light. That's the general treatment I used on this student. I worked with her to help her to see joy and pleasure in her past instead of total disappointment. After 6 months, she began to show improvement. At that point, I gave her a special assignment. Each day, I asked her to think of and write down 3 specific reasons she has to be happy. Then at her next appointment with me on Thursday, I had I would go over her list with her. I continued this sort of treatment for 3 months. Her improvement was very satisfactory. Today that woman is very well adjusted to her situation. She is positive and certainly as happy as most people. When this woman quite drawing negatives from her memory bank, she was headed toward recovery. Whether the psychological problem is big or little, the cure comes when one learns to fight drawing negative from one's memory bank and withdraws positive instead. Don't build mental monsters. Refuse to withdraw the unpleasant thoughts from your memory bank. When you remember situations of any kind, concentrate on the good part of the experience. Forget the bad, bury it. If you find yourself thinking about the negative side, turn your mind off completely. And here is something very significant and very encouraging. Your mind wants you to forget the unpleasant. If you will just cooperate, unpleasant memories will gradually shrivel and the teller in your memory bank cancels them out. Mr. Melvin S. Hatwick, noted advertising psychologist, in commenting on our ability to remember says, when the feeling aroused is pleasant, the advertisement has a better chance to be remembered. When the feeling aroused is unpleasant, the reader or listener tends to forget the advertisement message. The unpleasant runs counter to what we don't want to remember it. In brief, it really is easy to forget the unpleasant if we simply refuse to recall it. Withdraw only positive thoughts from your memory bank. Let the others fade away, and your confidence, that feeling of being on top of the world, zooms upward. You take a big step toward conquering fear when you refuse to remember negative, self-deprecating thoughts. Why do people fear other people? Why do many folks feel self-conscious around others? What's behind shyness? What can we do about it? Fear of other people is a big fear. But there is a way to conquer it. You can conquer fear of people if you will learn to put them in proper perspective. A business friend who is doing exceptionally well operating his own good novelty plan explained to me how he got the proper perspective of people. His example is interesting. Before I went into the army in 12-2, I was scared of just about every day. You just wouldn't believe how shy and timid I was. I felt everyone else was a lot smarter. I worried about my physical and mental inadequacies. I thought I was born to fail. Then, by some fortunate quirk of fate, I lost my fear of people in the army during part of 1942 and 1943. When the army was reducing men at a terrific clip, I was stationed as a medic at one of the big induction centers. Day after day I assisted in examination those men. The more I looked at these recruits, the less afraid of people I became. All those men lined up by the hundreds, naked as zebras, looked so much alike for sure. There were fast ones and skinny ones, tall ones and short ones, but they all were confused. All were lonesome. Just a few days before, some of these were rising young executives. Some were farmers, some were salesmen, drifters, blue-collar workers. A few days before, they had been many things. But at the induction center, they were all alike. I figured out something pretty beside basic back then. I discovered people are alike in many more ways than they are different. I discovered the other fellow is pretty much like me. He likes good food. He misses his family and friends. He wants to get ahead. He has problem. He has problems. He likes to relax. So if the other fellow is basically like me, there is no point in being afraid of him. Now, doesn't that make sense? If the other fellow is basically like me, there is no reason to be afraid of him. There are two ways to put people in proper perspective. One is get a balanced view of the other fellow. Keep these 2 points in mind when dealing with people. First, the other fellow is important. Emphatically, he is important. Every human being is. But remember this also. You are important too. So when you meet another person, make it a policy to think, we are just two important people sitting down to discuss something of mutual interest and benefit. A couple of months ago, a business executive phoned to call me. He had just enjoyed a young man whom I had recommended to him shortly before. Do you know what really sold me? What really sold me? What really sold me on that? Fellow asked my friend. What I asked? Well, it was the way he handled himself. Most job applicants, when they walk in here, are half scared. They give me all the answers they think I want to hear. In a way, most job applicants are a little like beggars. They all accept anything and they aren't particular. But G handled himself differently. He respected me. But what's just as important, he respects himself. What's more, he asked me as many questions as I asked him. He is no mouse, he is real man, and he is going to do all right. This mutually important attitude helps you keep the situation balanced. The other fellow does not become too important relative to you in your thinking. The other fellow might look frightfully big, frightfully important, but remember, he is still a human being with essentially the same interests, desires and problems as you. Two is develop an understanding attitude. People who want figuratively to bite you, growl at you, pick on you, and otherwise chop you down are not rare. If you are not prepared for people like that, they can punch big holes in your confidence and make you feel completely defeated. You need a defense against the adult bully, the fellow who likes to throw his meager weight around. A few months ago, at the reservations desk of a Memphis hotel, I saw an excellent demonstration of the right way to handle folks like this. It was shortly after 5 p.m. and the hotel was busy registering new guests. The fellow ahead of me gave his name to the clerk in a commanding way. The clerk said, "Yes, sir. Mr. R, we have a fine single for you." "Single," shouted the fellow. I ordered a double. The clerk said very politely, "Let me check it, sir." "Let me check, sir." He pulled the guest's reservation from the file and said, "I am sorry, sir. Your telegram specified a single. I would be happy to put you in a double room, sir, if we had any available, but we simply do not." Then the irate customer said, "I don't care what the that piece of paper says, I want a double." Then he started in that, "Do you know who I am?" Bit followed with, "I'll have you fired. you will see, I will have you fired. As best he could, under the verbal tornado, the young clerk injected, Sir, we are terribly sorry, but we acted on your instructions. Finally, the customer, really furious now, said, I would not stay in the best suit in this hotel now that I know how badly managed it is, and stormed out. I stepped up to the desk, thinking the clerk, who had taken one of the worst public tongue lashings I had seen in some time, would be upset. Instead, he greeted me with one of the finest, Good evening, sir, I would ever heard. As he went through the routine of processing my room, I said to him, I certainly admire the way you handled yourself just a moment ago. You have tremendous temper control. Well, sir, he said, I really can't get mad at a fellow like that. You see, he really isn't mad at me. I was just the scapegoat. The poor fellow may be in bad trouble with his wife, or his business may be off, or maybe he feels inferior, and this was his golden chance to feel like a wheel. I am just the guy who gave him a chance to get something out of its system. The clerk added, underneath, he is probably a very nice guy. Most folks are walking toward the elevators. I caught myself repeating aloud, underneath he is probably a very nice guy. Most folks are. Remember those who short sentences next time someone declares war on you. Hold your mind. Hold your fire. The way to win in a situation like this is to let the other fellow blow his stake and then forget it. Dear friends, your presence is really praiseworthy, admirable and appreciable. As you are listening, watching, dear friends, our nation is known by being creator, initiator and winner of the goodnesses. And all of you have enjoyed well the goodnesses of this nation by listening the appreciation of the holy words of this holy land. May God bless all of you. Thank you for your presence, dear friends. Dhanyavad.